Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling, well, a really significant piece of work in psychology. It's Volume 3 of John Bowlby's Attachment and Loss.
Yeah, it's huge. This volume looks intensely at how we, both as kids and adults, react when we lose someone we're deeply connected to.
And our goal here, our mission if you like, is to unpack Bowlby's ideas about mourning. He wasn't just describing sadness.
Not at all. He was giving us this whole framework attachment theory to really get why loss hits so hard, why it can be so disabling, and maybe crucially, why we often get the timeline for grief completely wrong. We tend to underestimate it.
He really threw down a gauntlet, didn't he? Challenging the psychoanalytic thinking of his time.
Oh, absolutely. He insisted that our need for attachment, for connection, is a primary drive. It's not just about food or sex. It's fundamental in its own right.
And that the seeds of later problems are often sown much, much earlier than people thought. A total paradigm shift.
Exactly. So to really grasp the pain of loss, we have to start with the attachment itself, what Bowlby called attachment behavior.
Okay, define that for us. Because attachment sounds kind of simple, but you're saying Bowlby saw it as distinct.
He did. He saw it as a specific class of behavior. The whole point is to get close to, or stay close to, one particular person, a preferred individual, the attachment figure. It's not about other needs.
Right, and this isn't just a childhood thing. It has real survival value throughout life.
Precisely. This system can be active your whole life. And think about it from an evolutionary perspective. Staying close to a caregiver, well, that kept you safe, didn't it? Reduced risks, like predators. It's a deep biological program.
So if the bond is about safety, survival, the emotions around it start to make a kind of stark sense. Bowlby maps it out, right?
Yeah, pretty clearly. Forming the bond, that's falling in love, keeping it going,
Yeah.
loving someone. And when it breaks, that's grief.
And the emotions are tied right in. He says the threat of loss brings anxiety.
And actual loss brings sorrow. And this is really important, he emphasizes that both situations often stir up anger.
Anger. Okay, we'll circle back to that. But what's going on underneath? These internal maps, these blueprints you mentioned. Why can't they just update when someone's gone?
Ah, that's the crux of it. He talks about representational models or internal working models. These are our ingrained ideas about ourselves, about others, especially our attachment figures, how reliable they are.
So these models get built up over time and become really fixed.
Very fixed. So when a major loss happens, the external reality changes instantly, devastatingly. But that internal blueprint, it lags way behind.
Wait, so you're saying grief isn't just feeling sad, it's actually this massive cognitive task, rewriting your brain's operating system almost.
That's a great way to put it. The core work of mourning, according to Bowlby, is cognitive. It's the slow, painful, difficult job of forcing those internal models to match the awful new reality.
Okay, so when that reality hits, Bowlby laid out some typical phases for healthy mourning based on studies, right? Not rigid stages, but a kind of pattern.
Exactly. Patterns, not rigid steps. First, there's often numbing. It might be brief, but it's that sense of shock, like you can't really process anything.
Oh, and then?
Then comes yearning and searching.
Yeah.
This is intense. You kind of oscillate. Intellectually, you know they're gone, but emotionally, there's this disbelief, this powerful urge to find them, to get them back.
That sounds incredibly painful. And you mentioned anger comes into play here. That seems counterintuitive for grief. Why anger?
Bowlby argues it's completely understandable, even biologically wired. Think about it. If someone you relied on disappeared temporarily, anger might actually help you overcome obstacles to find them, right? It mobilizes you.
Ah, okay. So it's useful for temporary separation.
Exactly. But when the loss is permanent, that angry searching behavior is, well, it's out of place, as Bowlby puts it. But it persists because our basic instinctual wiring hasn't caught up. It assumes all losses might be reversible. So you feel angry maybe at the person who died, maybe at doctors, maybe just at fate.
That makes a strange kind of sense. And the timeline. This is crucial for anyone listening who feels like they should be over a loss after a year.
Yeah, Bowlby's research blows that expectation out of the water. The studies he cited, widows in London, Boston, showed the majority took 2 to 3 years just to approach recovery.
2 to 3 years.
Minimum, often. And
Yeah.
coming back to active grieving, waves of it, that's completely normal. It's the rule, not the exception. Society's timeline is just wrong.
Okay, so that's the healthy, albeit long and hard, path. But what happens when that cognitive task, that updating of the internal model, gets stuck? What does pathological or disordered mourning look like?
Well, Bowlby saw disordered mourning, often stemming from what he called the defensive exclusion of information, basically pushing away the painful reality.
How does that manifest?
It can go in a couple of main directions.
Mm.
One is chronic mourning. This is where the grief stays incredibly intense, goes on for a very long time. It's often dominated by relentless anger or maybe deep self-blame. Life just stays disorganized. Saw this in maybe 10% of some study groups.
And the other direction.
That's the prolonged absence of conscious grieving. This one's tricky. Outwardly, the person seems fine, life goes on as before. But underneath, they're suffering anxiety, depression, even physical problems. It's like the numbing phase just never ends.
Wow. So they're functional on the surface but falling apart inside.
Pretty much. It's a precarious balance. Bowlby mentions one widow, Mrs. X, who described it like walking on the edge of a black pit, just holding it together.
And there are even more extreme versions of this denial, right? Like mummification. What's that about? Keeping a room untouched.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping the lost person's room, their clothes, everything just as it was. Bowlby suggested this often comes from a hidden, maybe unconscious belief or hope that they'll somehow come back.
And mislocations of presence.
Feeling the dead person is near is actually quite common in normal grief, usually fades. But it becomes pathological if it's constant or if it leads to really strange behavior. Like believing a new child is literally the reincarnation of the person who died.
But how does the mind do that? How does it block out something so huge, like the death of a loved one? Is there a mechanism?
Bowlby talks about deactivation. It's essentially repression. If the brain consistently blocks the input related to the loss, the whole attachment system can kind of seize up, become immobilized.
You mean shut down?
Functionally, yes.
Yeah.
There's a striking example. Mr. AA, his son was dying, then died, outwardly. Mr. AA showed zero grief. Seemed totally normal, talked about it calmly.
Okay.
But, and this is amazing, researchers measured his stress hormones, specifically steroid excretion. During a visit he made alone, his levels shot up, more than doubled.
Whoa! So his conscious mind was completely denying it, but his body was reacting intensely, physiologically grieving.
Precise, like a total split. It
Yeah.
proves the mourning process was happening biologically, even though he wasn't consciously aware of it or allowing it. Powerful stuff.
It really is. And this idea of blocking things off, it leads us straight back to childhood, doesn't it? Bowlby strongly links adult mental health issues, especially around loss, to early experiences.
Absolutely. Those internal working models we talked about,
Yeah.
they're formed early on. So certain childhood experiences can set you up for difficulties with mourning later in life.
What kinds of patterns did he identify?
He pointed out a few key predispositions. First, a tendency towards making anxious and ambivalent relationships. Think relationships with a lot of conflict, a lot of insecurity. High marital disagreement, for instance, was a predictor for poor outcomes after bereavement.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
A second pattern, which can look positive on the surface, is compulsive caregiving.
Constantly looking after someone else.
Yeah, dedicating your life to caring for a spouse or maybe a child. The problem is, when that person dies, the caregiver can feel intense self-reproach, like they failed. They often idealize the person they lost too.
You mentioned Mrs. J earlier, who cared for her husband constantly, then cried out, "Oh, Fred, why did you leave me?" That mix of anger and self-blame.
Exactly that. It's tied to that feeling of, I should have prevented this. And the third pattern is the opposite, almost. A strong drive to assert independence.
Trying to be totally self-sufficient.
Strenuously so.
Oh.
Often it masks a deep insecurity. They build up this false self, as Bowlby called it, that just can't acknowledge needing anyone. Loss shatters that illusion.
And children themselves. Their grief looks a lot like adult grief, doesn't it? Including the yearning and the anger.
Strikingly similar. But they're so vulnerable to how adults handle it. What happens when parents, maybe meaning well, tell kids not to grieve?
That must be incredibly damaging.
It creates emotional scar tissue, as Bowlby put it. He gives this heartbreaking example of a little boy, Patrick, just 3 years old. His mother told him not to cry in the nursery or she wouldn't visit.
Oh, no.
He took it as a terrible threat. So he completely suppressed his crying, his yearning. The only sign left was this tiny, abortive flicker of his fingers. He just looked tragic, withdrawn.
God, that's awful. The feeling is still there, but it can't come out properly.
It gets distorted. Like another child, Laura. She'd stopped obvious crying, but would sometimes just insert, "I want my mummy," into totally unrelated comments, like about a steamroller she saw. Flat tone, no emotion. The longing finds these little cracks to seep through, disguised.
Because the main path is blocked. So, given how intense and vital this process is, what helps? What conditions make a healthy outcome more likely for kids and adults?
The good news is the conditions seem pretty consistent. First, getting information promptly and accurately. Kids especially suffer when things are hidden or glossed over.
So honesty is key.
Yes. And being allowed to participate in grieving rituals, funerals, things like that. But maybe the most critical thing is having someone reliable there. A surviving parent or another trusted adult who can offer comfort and manage their own grief without falling apart.
That stable presence is vital.
Absolutely. And this links directly to the importance of the social environment and even formal support like counseling.
Did the research show counseling makes a difference?
Significantly. Studies looked at widows who were predicted to have poor outcomes. Maybe the death was very stressful, or the marriage difficult, lots of unmet needs. Those who got counseling ended up doing almost as well as the widows who were predicted to do well from the start. Much better than the at-risk group who didn't get counseling.
That really highlights the power of support. And Bowlby makes a distinction about loneliness too, right?
Yes, a crucial one. There's social isolation, not having enough contact with people, which group support can help with. But then there's emotional loneliness. That deep ache for a close, committed bond, that's only really remedied by finding a new, secure attachment figure. It's a different kind of pain.
And the long-term consequences, if things go wrong,
Yeah,
they're serious.
they really are.
Yeah.
The statistics are sobering. Women who lost their mothers before age 11 show a significantly higher rate of developing depression later. Losing a parent in childhood also increases the risk of serious suicidal thoughts in young adulthood. How the family navigates that loss has ripples for decades.
It really underscores that mourning isn't just about getting through sadness. It's shaping your future mental health.
So let's try and pull this together. What Bowlby shows us is that mourning isn't optional. It's a fundamental biological process. It's that difficult cognitive and emotional work of updating our internal maps of the world.
A necessary recalibration.
Exactly. And when that process gets blocked or distorted, maybe by pressure in childhood or through our own defenses like denial, the consequences can be severe, leading to real psychopathology down the road.
Which brings us to a really vital takeaway for you listening right now. What attachment theory strongly suggests is this. When you face a major loss, the very person you usually turn to for comfort is often the one who's gone.
Right.
So if your grieving process is going to have a chance to follow a healthy path, it becomes absolutely essential to be able to turn somewhere else, to find comfort and support from others.
You can't do it alone.
You really can't. And that leaves us with one last, maybe unsettling thought to chew on, based on everything Bowlby laid out. We know attachment is wired for survival, but the pain of loss, especially unavoidable, profound loss, it's immense. Is that agony just the unavoidable price we pay for forming deep bonds? Or could that intense turmoil itself actually serve some hidden evolutionary purpose we don't fully grasp?